Tim Twentyman, DetroitLions.com, senior writer and insider. Tim, it's been a minute, man. How you doing, buddy?
Good. How you guys doing?
You're
Good,
doing
man.
really
Thanks
good.
for coming on, buddy.
Tim's always quick and to the point, man. That's why I love him. He gets a
there.
lot out and a little bit of information.
That's it.
Let's start with the news today that Lance Newmark, Senior Director of Player Personnel, is leaving. He's going over to the Washington Commanders. 26 years he's been here. Is that a sign of something, or is it just a better opportunity over there with the Washington Commanders?
Well, I think it's just a sign of the times. You know, when you have success and you have the success that Brad Holmes has had over the last 3 drafts, Lance has been one of those guys that's been right up there as his right-hand man. And so it's just an opportunity. The assistant GM, you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, sorry. The assistant GM job in Detroit's already taken, so it's an opportunity for Lance to kind of elevate himself, and it's very much deserving, and he will certainly be missed in Detroit.
Hey, Tim, you put out a great column yesterday. We talked about it a little bit yesterday. The 5 reasons why the Lions could get back to the NFC title game. We'll start it off with DC and Brad. We're talking about Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes, that connection. Tell us a little bit about that and what they're going to take from last year going into this season.
Well, guys, that GM head coach relationship is one of the most important in the building. I mean, if those two guys aren't in lockstep, I think it's hard to build the roster the right way. And everything you hear from those guys, they have a terrific relationship. They build this thing together. And, what are the 2 things you need most in an organization? You need a GM who can find talent, and then you need a head coach with a staff who's proven that he can develop it. And that's what they've been able to do in Detroit. Brad's been able to identify talent. You guys were talking about some of it. And then you look at the head coaching staff and to develop some of that talent. Now, obviously when you get guys like Penei Sewell and top draft picks, you expect those guys to come in right away and be good players. But the development part is the guys like Derek Barnes this year, right? Yep. He had the interception to clinch the NFC Championship game. You look at Fatu Melifonwu in his 3rd season, had the interception to clinch the NFC North. There's an example of players who were developed under this coaching staff. So they brought in immediate talent, and then they've shown the ability to develop also other talent. And I think that's a terrific duo to have lasting success and good roster balance for the foreseeable future. And that's why having those 2 guys back, I think, is huge.
Tim, I agree with you. It's much like the player development in the last 3-4 years of Jim Harbaugh. You've seen those players get better, hence to why they were and why they won the national championship. I want to piggyback something Matt said just real quick. Does it bother you, and this is just me just asking questions, does it bother you that it seems like Brad Holmes is always trying to find the diamond in the rough? Now, he's gotten a lot lucky a lot of times, drafting injured players, finding the diamond in the rough. You look at the Amon-Ra St. Brown and look at the Brian Branch this year. He's found some guys. But at some time, does it come a point where you don't find that diamond in the rough, as opposed to seeing something that's right in front of your face? Once again, just playing devil's advocate.
Yeah, no, I think this draft will be interesting because, Brad's been afforded some top picks, right? So he's been able to get the guys that are obvious picks, right? Aiden Hutchinson, Penei Sewell, guys that you knew right away were going to step in. You didn't really have to question that. I think it'll be interesting this year with the 29th pick. He's got to trust the film. And I think you have to trust your film and you have to trust your board when you're taking 29 and you're selecting later in the draft as a result of being a successful football team. So I think, this will be a fun one for Brad, I think, because he likes just trusting the film and watching the tape. And that's what he's going to have to do in this draft. And, to your point, you're not going to get the number 1 cornerback. You're not going to get the number 1 pass rusher. You're going to have to get the guy that fits you, that fits your scheme, that fits your tape, that fits your culture. And I think that'll be a fun one this year to evaluate Brad with what he does with some of these late round picks.
Good call.
Yeah, you were talking about Brad Holmes and just how he drafts the culture guys. When he was giving his last press conference, kind of like planting his flag about, hey, listen, you guys didn't listen to me the first time around. He didn't single you out, but he singled out some writers. It also isn't about who he drafts. It's who he doesn't draft. Because if you saw the news about Jalen Carter threatening families, posting pictures recently from the offensive lineman that he was talking about, can you speak to the guys that, wouldn't even fit in that locker room and how it just kind of takes them out of the running even if they do show out on tape?
Yeah, it's funny. It was actually the first question that I asked Brad in the press conference was, look, you guys have built your core now. Now I think it's not just about adding the most talented pass rusher, the most talented wide receiver, the most talented player at this position. That also has to be a fit because now you've got your core. you've got your guys, Penei Sewell, Aiden Hutchinson, Amon-Ra, St. Brown. Like your base, the core of your football team is built. So adding just a most talented guy that doesn't fit that room, I think doesn't make sense. It's got to be a culture fit. It's got to be about how they play, fit their schemes and their style. But most importantly, guys, fit the locker room, because that's what they love about this team. They love the chemistry and the young talent that they have. And so it's not just about bringing guys that maybe might disrupt that a little bit, but guys that you think can help you on the football field, but also mesh with what you've got in the locker room, which is something that you don't want to mess with because it's really, really good right now.
Tim, that's all good. It's all well and good. Listen, I'm a Brad Holmes guy. I love what he's done with this team. I am a little upset about like the free agent side of things. And I loved C.J. Gardner-Johnson last year. Cam Sutton. Emmanuel Mosley was a reach with the injury. But don't you think this year they have to go out and get that player on that D-line? Go out and get him. How about a guy in the secondary? Go out and get a guy that's proven already. Or are you going to roll the dice again and hope that you hit the jackpot like they did last year with that draft?
No, I would expect them to I know what Brad said, and he said, look, we're not going to be huge in the free agent market, but I would be very shocked if they didn't go get, one of the top 3 or 4 cornerbacks, one of the top, 3 or 4 defensive tackles or defensive linemen. But you guys got to remember, they've got some bills to pay, and it's a good problem to have.
Sure.
How many times have we talked here about, guys not getting second contracts, guys not earning second contracts, and now, they've got a lot of cap space, but Amon-Ra St. Brown is coming due. Jared Goff is coming due. You got to know that Penei Sewell is going to set the market next year when you probably opt to do that one. Aiden Hutchinson's going to be coming due here soon. So you got some stuff that you've got to take care of in-house, and that's a good thing. That's what you want. Guys that you drafted, you developed, and now you get to pay. So that's going to be number one for Brad. But that being said, you can manipulate the cap a little bit. You can find ways to get room. And I would be very, very surprised if they didn't add, at least one of the top defensive guys in this free agent class.
I'm going to throw a few names at you. You tell me if you think any of these guys have a chance to be a Detroit Lion. Start with Chris Jones. I'll go to Josh Allen with the Jags. I'll go to Justin Madubuike with the Ravens, Brian Burns with the Panthers, L'Jarius Sneed, Antoine Winfield, Jalen Johnson.
Maybe one of those cornerbacks. I think the pass rushers, I think, are just going to be, probably out of their budget after what they do with their own guys, and then knowing that Aiden's coming down the line too. Liam is another guy that they really love that's going to, have to come due. So, like I said before, it's a good problem to have. Maybe one of those cornerbacks. I'd be a little surprised if it was one of the pass rushers, because there you're talking over $20 million per, and I just don't know if they're going to have it, guys, after take care of their own guys. But look, guys like Alex Anzalone, guys like David Montgomery wasn't considered a top free agent last year. He was one of those guys that was, a nice piece, had a nice career, but you get him here and what he means. So don't always think of the number 1, number 2, number 3 guys. The number 4, number 5, and number 6 guys who maybe now it's a perfect fit in this scheme. We saw with guys like Alex Anzalone, guys like David Montgomery last year, that can fit here, and it can be a really good fit and a huge upgrade.
Amon-Ra on yesterday, Tim, from the 33rd team. Guy's one of the best in the biz.
Yeah, he is.
Bryce Huff from the Jets, 10 sacks last year. His name popped up, and Ari thinks the Jets would move him.
Yeah, it's a good scheme fit. If you look at, the scheme that Aaron Glenn runs and them, obviously looking for a guy opposite Aiden Hutchinson, he's certainly a guy that fits. And I think it's going to be a great market with, some guys that are free agents, but also some guys that maybe are looking for, a new place to play, some trade possibilities there. So, I think they're going to be able to add, a pass rusher in some way, shape, or form. I would expect a pass rusher and a cornerback in free agency, and then a pass rusher and a cornerback in the draft, and you build some competition, both veteran and rookie, in those 2 rooms.
Talking to Tim Twentyman, DetroitLions.com, senior writer and insider. Tim, one thing that doesn't get talked about because it is so good, because it was the best thing the Lions did, because it's number 1 and number 2 in the league, is the offensive line play, especially when all those guys are together. Is that something that needs to be addressed? I look at Taylor Decker contract coming due next year. I look at Jonah Jackson. The injuries, it seems like he's always injured. Vaitai, Frank Ragnow, almost potentially a retirement scare this year. And then Glasgow, he needs to be signed.
Yep.
Panay is fine. We know Panay is good, but he is coming to us. What is the offensive line a concern for Brad Holmes that we're just not talking about?
Yeah, I think I don't know if it's a concern, but I would consider it a priority for sure. And he said as much in his postseason press conference. You can't take what's a strength and then turn your head on it a little bit, worry about the defense and making that better, and then all of a sudden you've taken a step back on offense. Well, to me, you're not a better football team then. That's your strength. That's your bread and butter. That's what makes Jared Goff go. That's what made the rookies, running backs, what they were, was that offensive line. And so, they're going to have to make a decision on Taylor Decker. The good thing is he is signed for another year. Frank is signed, Penny signed. They're just going to have to make a decision on Jonah Jackson and Graham Glasgow. I would expect Graham Glasgow to be back. I talked to him after the season. He said, look, I want to be back. They have shown interest in me coming back. It's going to take a little bit of a pay increase, which you would expect. And I would expect the Lions to, certainly look to do that. And then it'll just be Jonah Jackson, to me, is the one question mark. I think if you're the Lions, you want to bring him back. You want to keep those 5 together. You look at what they were as a football team, what they were as an offense. When those 5 guys played together this year, they were pretty darn good. I think they were 9-1, and maybe it was the Dallas game that they lost. So some would think they were 10-0. So I look at that if I'm Brad Holmes and I say that's a priority. You've got to make a decision on Jonah, but even if you don't make a decision on him in terms of signing him back, and if he gets big money on the free agent market, I would expect them to bring in a veteran, a guy with a lot of experience that certainly fits into that room. Brad Holmes knows that's a priority. I would expect them, to look seriously with re-signing Jonah, certainly with Graham. And if not, they're certainly not going to turn their backs on it. They're going to make sure that is still one of the strengths of this football team, no matter what.
Personal question for you, Tim. How does it feel to just now be ramping up for draft talk? I mean, we're in February. Usually this is something we beat to death by now. But how does it feel as a beat writer finally just be able to follow it along like another successful team?
Yeah, it's been a little bit different. This is the first year I never went to the Senior Bowl, and I love the Senior Bowl. Wow. I mean, some guys maybe don't, but it kind of gets me, kick-started on some of these guys. You get to see them in a football environment, and it kind of kicks off the season for me. Well, I was getting ready for the NFC Championship game, so I gladly, refunded that trip to Mobile. But yeah, it's different. I dipping my toe into the mock draft game this year, and I was just working on that today. I mean, that's something that some guys have been doing 3 weeks ago. So it's been a little different. It's been a little fun. It's been getting some used to, but look, I could certainly get used to it some more, covering real games and not looking forward to something that's happening 3 months from now.
Hey, Tim, considering how the defense of the Chicago Bears finished down the stretch of the season, they were much better once they got Montez Sweat, considering they are one of 3 teams that kind of control this draft, as Maz was pointing out before you came on. Are the Chicago Bears a real threat to what the Lions are starting to build here in Detroit? Well, have built, it seems, in Detroit. Are the Chicago Bears a real threat this upcoming season?
Yeah, I think so. They've got a big decision to make at quarterback. Is Caleb Williams better than, what they have? And that's going to be their number one decision. And if they think it is, then, you take him at 1, and you've also got another, top 10 pick there that you can, maybe add another receiver, one of those top receivers to, fit with DJ Moore, and all of a sudden that's pretty explosive. You mentioned how the defense played down the stretch. That's always been tough. To me, it's just, could they have a consistent passing game to go along with what's always a pretty good run game, and then always a solid defense, and if they can do that, I think, they're going to take a big step forward. I think Green Bay is going to be right there with Detroit next year. Minnesota might be in kind of retooling mode depending on what they do at the quarterback position. But, I think certainly the fans can expect the NFC North to be much more competitive for Detroit next year with Green Bay and Chicago, I think. Taking that next step. Green Bay kind of already did. They've got their quarterback, but I think it's going to be a much more competitive NFC North and a much harder season overall with the schedule for Detroit next season.
Agreed.
Hey, Tim, before we let you go, just to go over your column one more time, you had the 5 reasons the Lions can get back to the NFC title game. We talked about Campbell and Brad Holmes. The coaching staff is back, which is amazing, unbelievable. The rookie development, they're only going to get better. The superstar talent on this team is right there for the taking. And then there's Jared Goff. Jared Goff was one of your reasons they're coming back, man. What are we going to look for in Jared Goff? What kind of deal is he going to get going forward? And Hendon Hooker, is he the solid second-string quarterback?
Yeah, look, you can't win consistently in this league without consistent quarterback play. It's just you just can't. That position has to be solid, and I think Jared Goff over the last 2 years has proven that he's more than solid. He was top 5 in the league in passing yards, top 5 in touchdowns, top 10 in passer rating. Look, you protect Jared Goff and you run the football with him. He is extremely accurate. He can run this offense. Him and Ben Johnson built it. He knows it to a T. I think if you sit them in a room together, they can probably finish their own sentences. Each other's sentences. Excuse me. That's how lockstep they are. And I think to get him back, Ben Johnson talking about, is so huge for Jared Goff and this team next year. Instead of a new offense and new language and everything else, you just pick up right where you left off, and where he left off was playing Pro Bowl caliber quarterback. So yeah, I think that's huge to have that position in lockdown. Look, I think they're going to talk to Jared. You see what some of the contracts out there are, between 40 and 50 million. I would guess he's somewhere in that range. I don't know, what his, what he's thinking in terms of maybe, do I want to leave a little bit more to have something? Do I want to be the top paid guy? I haven't had those conversations, and I don't know where those negotiations stand, but I would expect Jared Goff to get paid among the top quarterbacks in the league. He's proven over the last 2 years that he is one of the top, 5 to 10 quarterbacks in this league. And so, look, at that position, you pay it, you tip your cap, and you know that's locked down, and you sleep a lot better at night when it comes to Hendon Hooker, excuse me. I think he took a big step, being able to come off NFI practice there at the end. They threw him into some situations in practice. They like how he spins it. Obviously they liked him as a player and a developmental player, and taking him in the 3rd round next year. And I think he heads into next year as the guy, that's probably going to back up Jared. But I would expect them maybe to add a veteran too and have competition in that room. Having competition in that room is never a bad thing going into a season, but I would expect it to be Goff and Hooker 1-2 next year.
Cool.
And a question about probably the most important, sexiest position on the football field. Place kicker. Has there been any rumors of what they're going to address, what they're going to attack? Are they going to draft a young guy? The free agent pool for kickers does not look very great, but has there been any talk about getting a kicker on this team that they can trust?
The Texans kicker.
Yeah, guys, that stuff really ramps up in about a week, about 2 weeks, when, we all go to the Indianapolis, we all go to the Combine. We'll get a chance to talk to Dave Fitt, the special teams coordinator there. We'll get a chance to talk to Aaron and Brad and Dan and Ben and everybody else. And I think that's when those kind of stuff start to come a little bit clearer. I would certainly expect them. I think there's 3 guys that are the consensus top guys in this draft. That, I think the kid from Arkansas, a kid from Alabama. So, look, Dave's certainly going to do his homework on those guys. But, also, Michael Badgley, he had a lot of success in the playoffs. He was 3 for 3, 11 for 11 in extra points, hit that key 54-yarder against the Rams. He's a guy they trust. So, I would expect, him to potentially be back, maybe add a veteran guy and maybe add a young guy to the mix too, and just kind of figure it out. But I think we'll know a little bit more about that in a couple of weeks coming out of Indianapolis in the Combine.
Tim, last question from us, and we'll let you get out of here. We appreciate you coming on as always. You were talking about the Senior Bowl. It got me thinking about some guys in the draft. One of the guys in the draft is J.J. McCarthy, somebody who Ryan Ermanni is absolutely infatuated with. With the way it's slated right now, you're looking at a Caleb Williams, a Jaden Daniels, a Drake May. You're looking at maybe J.J. McCarthy, Michael Penix, Bo Nix. What is your estimation on where J.J. McCarthy is probably going to end up, especially maybe after he shows out the Combine, just right now?
And he will show out.
Oh, look at that. So I told you guys I finished my mock draft here. I was working on it. So now you guys are going to have me give you a little teaser to the mock draft.
Give us a little teaser.
All right. So, look, when I say JJ, I think NFL people are going to like him a lot more coming out of Indianapolis. I think when they see his athleticism, and then when they talk to him in the meeting room, everything I hear out of Ann Arbor is that he's a terrific leader. He's a great teammate. And I think that's where you can show that for the first time in that meeting room in Indianapolis. And, there's a couple teams right in the middle there. I think where the Raiders are at and where New Orleans is at, I think those are two spots where I think JJ could come into play. And I think in my first mock draft, I had him going to the Raiders right there. I forget what pick it was. They were 13 or 14, 15, somewhere right there in the middle. But I think the Raiders look to maybe add a quarterback, and I think JJ could be a fit right there.
Can you spill the beans on the Lions pick?
I can't spill the beans on the Lions
man.
pick, guys. You
All
got to
right,
wait
Timmy.
till early next week for that
All right,
one.
Timmy. All right. Thanks so much, man, for coming on. We appreciate you. We appreciate you and your time. Give Mike O'Hara our best, and we're looking forward to the draft, man. Can't wait to have you back on, and good luck in Indianapolis.
Yeah, sounds good, guys. Enjoy the day.
Thanks,
We
Timmy.
appreciate you coming on. We'll see you soon.
Tim Twentyman, DetroitLions.com.
Always a pleasure, man. Tim always is very concise. He's to
Terrific.
the point. He gets great information. I always love having him on.